Okay, good morning, everybody. Wow, that was like amazing. Not a single reaction.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. All right. I'm really trying to figure this whiteboard thing out that I want to use here in a minute, but okay. Anybody use the whiteboard before? Oh, why it's like scribbling, and maybe I'll just have to try that in a minute. Okay. Good morning. I hope your weekend was fantastic. All I know is I'm glad to be back at work because when I'm home on the weekends, it's like blood, sweat, and tears. I'm redoing my backyard and it feels good to be at work. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit record on this so we get this going. Now, all right, well. Hey, listen, appreciate you guys hopping on the call this morning. Going to cover some, I think, some pretty significant things. Last week, a few of us were able to go to a Gold Nation function down in Sacramento. And can I just stop for a minute? Because I think sometimes um, those of us here in Utah don't understand the power and the significance of Gold Nation and at a bare minimum, just helping us to become a better organization here in Utah. But some of the things that we're able to um, leverage from some really top-notch people, albeit in different states, is actually really pretty impressive. So, going to cover a little bit of that today. Let's start with this, and I'm glad if you can just, unless you got something noisy in the background, unmute for a minute because I want this to be kind of a participation sport. How did May go for you? How did May go by way of transactions, business, activity? What's it looking like? Anybody?
A little slow for me.
Yeah,
Slower than
Kyle?
normal. A little slower for me. Slower than normal.
Yeah. Okay. How about you, D?
Good.
Okay, that's like the question. That's the answer I get from my kids. Good.
It was
Put a
good.
put a
It
little
was,
flesh on that. Did you have deals close?
I've
Picking up
got two
business?
closing on Friday.
Nice.
And I got the whole solar panel paid 45,000. It was a big win.
Nice. Good work. Good
But
work.
I do see prices either stalling or coming down. I see the arrows, I see change.
I'm going to show you something on that. I always want you guys to be glad you're on this call to get stats, information, tactical stuff to help in your business. So hopefully I'll hit all those things today. Jake, how's your business going? How did it go in May?
Slow. I'm still just getting back to marketing with people, and things aren't easy and just rolling in like they used to. So really having to grind and dig for stuff, fill that pipeline.
You know what? Don't want to overstate that, but what you just said is really true for a lot of people now. Um, a lot of, not a lot, but I was looking at some stats this morning, and year over year, number of transactions closed just for May was down about 11%. Now, that's not the end of the world, but a 10, 11% hit on closed transactions is nothing to ignore either. And so getting back to it, like you said, the grind and being back in contact with people, and rather than things falling in our lap, which happened, a year or two ago, probably a good strategy. So, Haley, what are things looking like in your neck of the world?
They're slow. I had two close on Friday, but they've been in the pipeline for, two and a half months, 2 months. Got a listing coming this week, but it's really slow for me.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but I'm not marketing. I just do what comes to me, and that's changing.
yeah.
So I'll either be happy with that or else I'll do something different. But I'm not the best benchmark because I don't market, period.
That's okay. We've got several agents like that,
Oh.
and usually the commonality is you've been in the business for a good long time, you've got a good sphere of influence, and frankly, don't take this the wrong way. A lot of times your sphere business is significant and walks to you, right? Now, to just put a final point on that, it's also something we should never ignore, and especially as things are getting tighter, probably a good approach to be a little more in contact, maybe do a little more outreach. And if there's ever an opportunity for events, which is kind of a low-key way of making that contact, make sure you're taking advantage of it.
Yep.
Don, I know you're driving. I appreciate you changing the perspective, because for a minute there I thought you were laying down. But how's your business going this past month in May? Now don't crash. I don't want to.
I had a really nice closing the end of May, and I picked up a few buyers that I'm working with this month.
Awesome. Okay, so I just like everybody to kind of hear, because sometimes we think we're on an island. It's like, oh my gosh, my business isn't great or whatever, but also to see that there are people having success as well. Good market, bad market. I'll just finish with this on this particular segment. 2008 was probably one of the toughest times. I mean, I got in the business just after 9/11. I thought that was tough. Then 2008 hit, and that was basically almost a 5-year drought. And those were some tough times. But guess what? Transactions still closed. It's amazing. How we did them was different. There were more short sales and stuff like that. Just remember this: real estate always has been and always will be a part of our day-to-day business. The trick for us is to make sure that we're in tune with what's going on in the market and we adjust our business accordingly. Fair enough? All right. Okay, so quick stat. Let me grab this, drag it over here. There it is. All right, now I'm going to share my screen. I've showed you guys this, I think, before, but it kind of, somebody had talked about price reduction. So if you look over here, here's all my data, and I pull this directly from the MLS every day. It's a labor of love because there's no way for me to really automate this. But what it does is it shows in red the number of active listings who reduced their price versus the green, which are those that increase price. Anybody seeing something here? You know, through May, people were still somewhat optimistic and we're still raising prices. But yeah, I don't know what the deal was on May 3rd, but maybe a builder dumped a bunch of inventory and increased prices. But man, if you look at the totals here, since tracking this particular page from April 1st, 86% of the price changes have been reductions in price. 86, that's a pretty solid number. And you can see that the red is increasing as we're going on in the year. So it doesn't take a genius to read the tea leaves and say, well, you know, this, 2024 market is, not going to be a slam dunk, that there is work to do. But if you line up correctly, there will be enough to fill your plate, I promise you. The question really is do we adjust and to the market conditions? So one other thing I wanted to show you with this. When you get so many windows up, it kind of gets embarrassing. You can't keep track of things. All right, so are you guys seeing this box in the bottom right on mine?
Yeah.
All right. I hope I can make that go away. There we go. All right. Super easy thing for you to do. Oh my hell. You gotta be kidding me. All right. Super easy thing to do, right? When we log into the MLS, I've told you guys about these widgets, the market update widget and the market statistics widget. And if you don't have those widgets configured, I think they default in, but if not, you can go in and change your widgets I'm not going to cover that now, but if you go to the market statistics, here's a great one. Just show you how easy this is at your fingertips to keep your finger on the pulse. So right now they default for a month's worth of data, right? And it tells you the number of sales, the average sold price, the average list price. And if I were to do just something simple like this, everybody should have some type of a, what's the word I'm thinking of, a screen grabber tool. Just come in here and grab that data, and then just come back here and change the year to 1 year back on both of these date fields. All right, and then let it update.
Matt, can you change that to a median sold price if you wanted rather than the average?
You know what? You are reading my mind. I have
Yeah.
asked them to change that. It is not available currently. So,
Wow.
all right. So if we look at this, there's your May 2023 to June 2023 number. Notice the number of sales, 3,903. And if we go back to my screen capture, number of sales, June 10th, that cannot be right. What did let's try refreshing that. There we go. I was like, there's no way we're down 90%. Okay, so a year ago, May to June, there were 3676. And in the most recent month, May to June, it was 3215. That's about 10, 11% drop, right? That's, if you did nothing else with your stats and just did that daily to know, what the market was compared to a year ago. You can also leverage, hey, the average sold price was 645. That's this year versus a year ago, it was 608. So pricing's going up. The number of sales are going down. Parker, you enjoying that? Okay.
Very much, actually, very much.
Yeah. So the good news is if we stay engaged in the business, at least pricing's going up a little bit to offset. And again, it's going to depend on your market and what price point you're dealing with. But there is the possibility of a little bit higher price point on some of the properties that are being sold. So,
Well, and it's important to mention too that you can shift that zip code. So if you're working on a farming list, you can say, well, in this zip code, this is what's happening with all of these things, annually.
100%, right? I mean, I can come down here and I can choose a county, I can choose zip code, I can get it more specific. I was just demonstrating across the board for the whole state. So good point. All right. Given that there are roughly 11% less closings, at least in the past month, I think it behooves us to make sure that our skill set, we revisit our skill set to increase the probability of those deals that are in the hopper closing. Is that a fair statement? So here's what I wanted to do is ask, I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. I wanted to ask you guys what, if you were to kind of create a top 5, a top 10 list of the things that get in the way of either getting under contract or staying under contract, what would you say those top 5 or top 10 items are? Going under contract or staying under contract? And I'm going to capture these hopefully on a whiteboard.
It's great.
Okay. Anybody fire away.
I'm terrified.
Sorry, Matt. So just to clarify, what the objections are that are created. Thanks, man. What the objections are that are created after we've gone under contract?
Either getting under contract or once you're under contract, issues that you deal with.
Okay, issues that we deal with that pull us out of contract, or just issues that we deal with along the whole process?
The whole process, getting under contract or staying under contract.
Okay.
Inspections, obvious one.
Okay, I'm going to put that under a broader section known as due diligence items. Okay, what else?
Picky buyers.
Okay, Kyle, what do you mean by picky buyers?
Just not ready to make they just don't pull the trigger. It just seems like I got a lot of looky-loos, and we're either one or, number two or number three and just not on that top one. It seems like a lot of people going through and not making there's more options for them. At least, and again, it depends on down here in St. George, the $750 to $1 million mark has 6 months of inventory. If you're under that, it's a little bit better. But if you're dealing with, 128 houses to pick from and only 26 are selling in a month, it makes you got to have to be really priced to do it.
So would it be fair to put it in this category, features versus price versus idealism?
Yes.
Right.
Man, I would agree
Especially
with,
when
I
you're
would
dealing
agree
with
with him.
people who aren't experienced. I think all of us who've been in the business for a while have had this experience where it's like, well, it doesn't have everything I want. Oh, it's not facing the right direction. Oh, and at some point, hopefully they get to a realization that you get as many features as you can, but you're not going to get them all. Right.
Yeah.
Unless you want to pay ridiculous money.
Right.
All right. So we have due diligence, features, price, idealism. What else?
Appraisals.
Appraisals. All right.
Great
What
one.
else?
I mean, just affordability overall, right?
So can I
It's-
just say financing?
Yeah, that would be very big.
Okay. What else? You guys are missing like the most obvious one. I'm embarrassed for you that you're missing it.
We're not missing it. We're just not there yet. We're just talking.
Thanks, Haley.
What about the personality on the other side?
You mean-
Whether the agent or the seller or the buyer.
Well, definitely, I think communication is a big part. It's interesting to see how many agents on the other side of transactions are just have no idea about communication, right? Either communicating to or from.
Okay. That's a good one.
We just help them. It's not a roadblock.
There we go. I
Those
No,
love
other
we-
agents,
we-
they're
we
fine. We
do.
just help them and it's
We-
fine.
We do help them, Haley.
That's
but
the
we don't-
least of my worries. The damn interest rates that are the problem.
We just start with bless your heart, right? It all makes us feel better because we know what we're really saying, Okay, so I think we've got a good short list here, and we're gonna.
Also, Matt, I would say Savannah. Savannah's
Savannah's a problem.
Sorry, I'm a problem.
Welcome back, Savannah.
Thank you.
So listen, we actually could probably create a more exhaustive list, but I think for the purposes of this call, that's a good short list. As we talk about those items, if you were to be restricted to one thing, and I mean one thing, that is the most common in resolving all of those problems we listed, what is it? What would be your number one item that is the biggest cure for overcoming those problems?
Sell your own listings.
I'd say communication.
Bingo, Haley.
Yeah, communication.
That's
You can
it.
do that with appraisal. You can do that with setting expectations on due diligence and what to expect and what not, and what's kind of going to be covered and what they need to plan on. And you can do it with agent, all along the way, communication.
You know what? I'm glad you hit that one, and I'm going to just augment it just a little bit. Some people communicate pretty regularly, and they're horrible communications. So I would say effective communications coupled with a decent skill set, right? We can have a great skill set, but if we don't know how to communicate it, it's pretty much worthless, right? And I made a note here to make sure that underlying all of this, right? Of course, common decency afforded others, not reacting emotionally, understanding personality types, and keeping your focus and perspective. We're surrendering that all of those things we should know need to be there, right? If you don't have those things, you're probably going to be swimming upriver, and it's probably a pretty fast flowing river, to say the least. So what I wanted to cover today was basically a 5-step framework. Why this came to my mind is part of our training that we were at in California re-emphasized this, and I'm like, you know what, this is just something that we need to always be sharpening the saw and always getting better at. Kyle was there at the training with me, so this is going to echo with him. So, resonate with him. And so, Kyle, if I get stuck, you feel free to jump in, but this really should be intuitive, you guys. So when we're dealing with somebody who's, I'm going to be polite and just say challenged, or the situation is challenging, it's not always going to be the person. You may just be up against a tough situation. And communication has started, right? And we're going to surrender. We're not the ones that are raising an issue. It's going to be the other side. Let's just, for sake of this, what is the very first thing you should be thinking when somebody is raising an issue? And if you need help with this, channel your significant other and the interactions you've had with them or with your children. What is almost always the first thing you should be placing emphasis on, paying attention to? Haley, I call you up and I'm hot under the collar and I'm like, what the hell, blah, 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 whatever, blah, blah, blah.
The first thing I would do is listen to you. I wouldn't cut you off. I wouldn't shut you down. I'd let you vent. I'd let you go. I'd let you roll.
Yeah.
I would listen.
And you know what? Perfectly honest, that's tough to do sometimes, isn't it? I mean, especially if the person is like irrational or they're bringing up an issue that you just know is not really your fault and they're venting at you. What's human nature, Parker? What do we want to do? Human nature, not what should you do?
Defense.
Oh, yeah. What the hell are you raising your voice at me for? This isn't my problem. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean? I don't know if that's more a guy thing or I don't know, but it seems to be, generally speaking, a place we can go to pretty easily, especially if we're perceived that we're in the right. So, Haley, you brought up a point. When you listen to people talk about this, they call it active listening. And sometimes we use these terms and we're like, oh yeah, active listening. But what does that really mean? I mean, what are the brass tacks of it? How do you actively listen?
Well, Haley, if I may, I think.
Well, everybody should be unmuted.
Unmute people.
Yeah, I think listening is good, but more importantly, hearing what they have to say is very important, or the opposite. Some people say it's important to hear, but it's more important to listen. And those are two very different things, right? When Lauren, who's my girlfriend, has a problem with me, I tend to hear before I tend to listen. And that gets me into deeper and deeper piles of yuck. So it's much better when I'm listening, because I tend to be more receptive and I can repeat to her. So what I understand you're trying to say is this and this and this. Can we talk about that?
Oh, wait a minute. So now we just got some tactical information. One, could I suggest that, have you ever talked to somebody when you're trying to explain something to them, you can see them just kind of like they're chomping at the bit, ready to say something back? What's your perception of that person?
That they're not listening to me.
They're not listening.
They're just hearing, but they're already in their brain. They're already coming up with reasons, causes, yada, yada, yada.
Right. So might I suggest some tactics? And I hope you guys take some notes on this, because this is like at the very core of whether we're successful or not. Breathe. Take a freaking breath. It's not the end of the world, right? If you pay attention to your physiology when things are going a little sideways, you tend to, if you pay attention to it, you'll feel yourself starting to tense up, right? It's kind of human nature. What is the antidote for that? Take a big breath, right? You ever been to a chiropractor and you know he's about ready to snap your neck, or he's going to do the pretzel twist on your lower back? And what do they always say? Take a deep breath, let it out. Why? Because it forces your body to relax so that they can then make the appropriate adjustment, right? And so I wanted to create a mental image for you. So when you're going through a business chiropractic exercise where there's going to be some snapping and cracking, take a breath. There's no rush here. It's not a hurry. Take a breath, breathe. And when somebody's talking to you, if you do nothing else, then just give a subtle, occasional head nod. Does that mean I'm agreeing with them? Nope. All it's communicating is I'm hearing what you're saying. Right? All right, so that's step number one. Now, Parker, you hit on something, and I like your phraseology, and there's probably 100 different ways to say it. What do you say when you're done listening to Lauren?
Typically, I'm sorry.
No, not that far yet.
To be sure you understood what she was telling you.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, typically I say, okay, so this is from what you're saying,
hearing.
this is what I understand.
Yeah.
And can we talk a little bit more about this, or do I have this wrong, and can you help me understand it
Hey,
better?
stop there. As you listened to Parker, did that feel sincere or did it feel contrived? I don't know.
It felt real.
It felt sincere to me, right? And the reason I bring that up is our tonality is huge. One of the stats that's out there is 55% of communication is our body language. So if you're sitting in the room, how you sit, right? And you can do a lot of studies on this, on neuro-linguistic programming and mirroring and matching. If somebody's got their arms folded or if they're sitting back casually, you don't exactly mimic them, but you do roughly the same thing. It's to set them at ease, to feel like, communication is taking place. So that's the 55%. 38% is what? Your tonality.
Yeah.
And guess what? The remaining 7-8% is the actual words you use. So my point is if you say, I could say Parker's thing, the way he did it was sincere and heartfelt, or I could say, and notice the expressions in my face. So what I'm hearing you say is, right? I mean, right off the bat, you're like, listen, mother, I'm gonna smack you, right? So tonality is super important. And I will go back to this. If you're breathing and you're slowing down, you're probably going to be more successful. I mean, even simple little things like, what does mean?
It means whatever I interpret it to mean.
Well, does it come across as rude?
No. More so it comes across, that's interesting.
Yeah, which also means I'm listening. It can't be interesting if I'm not listening, but it's far from conceding the point. It's far from, agreeing with whatever was raised. So I know these sound like so simple, but ask somebody that you interact with on a regular basis. Ask them, how good of a listener am I? And be honest, right? They're probably going to give you 1 or 2 pointers. Don't be offended. Incorporate it. Get better at it. Trust me, 35 years of marriage, I've heard everything. All right. So that was point number 1. Make sure you listen well, and to the point where they know you understand what their concern is. And I like the restating, Parker. So many different ways you could say that. And like, hey, you know what? It sounds like the issue is this. Is that fair? Right? Is that a fair portrayal of it? And think of 20, 30 different ways to say that, but make sure you do that at the end. Okay. Second point, and this one sounds so easy. Ask questions. Why? Why do we ask questions? So they just stated the issue. Why would we even augment the issue? Don't we want it to go away?
No, you ask questions to gather data so you can figure out how you can frame the next question, so that you can have the next resource to tap into. So questions are great. I mean, when I talk to my agents about our buyer discovery sessions, typically we're meeting with those people right at the house, and so we need to have a quick 4 or 5 minute quick discussion with them that says, look, we're going to walk through the home, and when we're walking through the home, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to hear all of your feedback so that I know the best way to help you. So I think questions are really a great way to learn more and more about the real concerns and kind of
wait a minute. That part, the real concern.
Yeah.
Real concern. You'll find this when you deal with enough conflict, and I deal with a little bit of it. When you start asking questions, there's at least a twofold purpose. One is, yes, to discover more data, to get to what the core issue is. But as you ask questions, it reinforces that you're listening. And oh, by the way, I mean, this is every coach will tell you this, but Mike Ferry uses this, and he says, when you're asking questions, you're building what? You're building rapport. You're building the relationship. Now, there's a big caveat to this, and that is ask meaningful questions in a sincere fashion. If you just knee-jerk responses like, why is that important? Right? And I'm exaggerating the point, but you get the idea. If I ask the question that way, you're probably not going to feel very good about our communication and what's going on in the pathway to resolution. But an important thing is to remember to try and ask 3 layers deep, or at least 3 clarifying questions. And if I could suggest 3 categories for you, you can do it however you want. But the first one is, so help me understand why this is important. Right now, listen, if it's painfully obvious, the house burnt down, well, now why is that important? Of course, you're going to skip that, right? But in normal situations, if they're saying, hey, you know what, we did our home inspections and smells like a cat or so, whatever, right? You can think of so many different things that have come up in your career, but a lot of times just asking some questions. So listen, the cat smell, is that like super significant? And you're going to get some response like, yeah, my people are allergic to cats. Okay. I don't even know if I need to go 3 layers deep, but if you can think of these things, and I use acronyms to remember a lot of things in my life. ISM, why is it important? And when they explain to why it's important, I actually wrote these down. Why is this important? The second one is, and what's significant about that to you and or your client? And the third one is, so if we were to come to a solution, what would that mean for your client, right? Now, you're going to have to work your own phraseology on that, but remember, why is it important? What's significant about it? And what would it mean to your client? What does it actually mean for your client? If you can just drill down in some way with those 3 questions to get more detail, they're going to feel a lot better about you. The trust and the relationship, the rapport is going to go up. And you're actually going to quite often unmask what the real issue is, right? Because when you get to those, well, is this important? Is this significant? What's significant about it? You're gonna be like, well, it's only important because, and then you actually hear the real issue. Okay. All right. So
But also too, Matt, though, asking questions, you're controlling the conversation.
oh my gosh.
So you control it, you're leading the conversation, you're in charge of it. And also open-ended questions, which I don't think you hit, but open versus the yes, no. But
So correct. So give us an example of an open-ended question.
tell me more about that. It's the perfect one.
As simple as that. Tell me more about that. Or
Yeah.
take the ISM that I gave that to you. So why exactly is this so significant to your client?
Yeah.
Right? What would it mean to your client if we did get to some resolution? Right? Get them talking about it. And if you've noticed this in your personal relationships, and it translates to business, once you get them explaining more and being able to express more, you can literally feel the temperature, in most cases, the temperature coming down. It's like amazing. You just like watch it melt in front of you, right? So it begs the question, why aren't we better at this? Why don't we actually think about this and do it more in our business? So that's the challenge for you. Okay, so we've got the active listening. We're confirming it. We've got the questions and 3 layers deep. And Kyle, one last point. How many of you been in a listing presentation and you find yourself just kind of like regurgitating stuff, and you're like in performance mode and you're like, man, I hope this is going well. And you just keep talking and keep talking. And the person on the other side is kind of giving you this.
Yep.
Oh man.
Glassed over.
There is no worse feeling. You're like, maybe if I perform better, it'll get better. No, stop performing and start asking them questions.
Yeah. People like to talk about themselves. So let them talk as much as they possibly can. They'll tell you, I think we even talked about it even last week a little bit, but when I'm going in and they start bringing up pictures, when can when can we have a photographer over here or talk about, I know right there, I'm done. I'm like, okay, let's sit down and sign. I'm not going to continue and
Wait a
screw it
minute,
up.
we haven't covered our relocation program.
Yeah. Just like, okay, well, let's, I answer the question and then I just go right for the contract and because right now they've mentally have already closed.
Yeah, can you imagine? I'm going to do this in the extreme to just kind of demonstrate the point. Can you imagine if you were the home seller and somebody came in to me like, Haley, I appreciate you letting me come in, and I am super sensitive to, your time and time with your family and stuff like that. So would it be fair if I just ask you, what are the most important things to you about getting your home listed? Guess who's the performer, like instantaneously? Haley is. All the pressure's off me. It's the beauty of asking questions. The person who's answering is the performer. And yet, by and large, we go into listing presentation and be like, well, let me tell you why Remax is number one and Remax Associates and our ecosystem and blah, 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 blah. And here's how quick, and here's the photographer I use. And you know what? You're probably talking about 10 things they really don't care that much about. Why not just start off very simply, be like, your time is valuable and I appreciate you making time for me. I've got a lot that I could present to you, but I have found it terribly effective if I just ask the person sitting in front of me, what are the most important things to them? How hard of a presentation is that, right? And they're going to give you the roadmap. They're going to give you the answers to the test, right?
It's cool to go to the listings and you walk in the door and the first thing you say is, after the greeting is, why am I here? Right? So tell me why I'm here. And oftentimes what you'll get from people is, well, I'm here to sell my house, or you're here because I want to sell my house. Great. Tell me what that looks like to you. It kind of like just what you said, Kyle, right? Tell me what that looks like to you. And then just let them talk, because what it does is it takes all the stress and pressure that I had and all these expectations that I set for myself and thinking I have to do this and I have to be 700 websites and yada, yada. When really all they want to do is they're like, oh yeah, I just want to get it sold in the fastest amount of time possible.
Yeah. So however your personality allows that, you got to be careful to not be like too abrupt, too rude, like I'm in control. You tell me what, you know what I mean? Always all those underpinnings I said, the baseline, common decency and just respect. And if you do that coupled with these things, you'll have success. So if we go in and ask them for the roadmap and be like, hey, so seriously, what are your biggest concerns on getting the home listed? And be ready to prime the pump, because sometimes people aren't used to that. They're not ready. And say, is it time frame? Is it getting the house, in tip-top shape? Is it, how does this work on show? What are some of those concerns, right? Prime the pump, and usually it'll start flowing and you'll get the questions that are of most concern. Okay, so questions. If you're not good at asking questions, force yourself daily to practice. Practice with your own family. Your kids will be like freaked out. Why is Dad asking me all these questions? He seems to really care. And
Hey, Matt,
yeah.
I make it fun. We just have like got this right here. But basically I have like, if I'm training somebody or whatever, I'm asking you a question and whoever has the pen is the one controlling the conversation. So, just make it fun. It's just like, so Matt, how you doing today? And then
I'm doing pretty well. Why do you ask, Kyle?
yep. And then now you get the pencil. And then I go, oh yeah, I'm doing, you go back and forth and just continue. Whoever is the one asking is controlling the conversation. It just makes it fun when you have multiple people.
It makes it fun, and it pretty quickly points out perhaps some of your deficiency in asking good questions. And so
quickly
don't beat yourself up. Just make note. Hey, you know what? What really should I say in this situation? And think of 3 or 4 different ways you could ask the question, right? And practice that daily on different areas, right? So Parker, if you and I were sitting down and we ran into an issue, I think my house is worth $650,000, and you've done your pre-listing analysis and you know it's not going to sell for more than 600,000. And we get to that point in the conversation and I'd be like, so Parker, what do you think we should list my house for? And you say
600,000.
600,000. And I kind of give you a little bit of an eye roll. I'm like, well, I don't know where you're getting your data from. I mean, you're allegedly the professional, but I'm pretty sure it's going to sell. It should sell for 650,000. So stop. Did you feel that? Did you feel your reaction to want to just be like, fire back and be like, yeah, well, I'm the one with the MLS. I'm the one with the data. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Where'd you get your data? That's that first step we were talking about. Don't overreact. Breathe. Now, next step would be hearing me. What do you say, Parker?
Okay, so I understand you think the property is worth, or you think it'll sell for 650,000.
Yeah,
And
I mean, Bob's house down the street, almost the exact same thing. He sold for 645, and that was last year.
Awesome. That was actually my next question is, what data are you looking at for that? Because I'd love to see some of that so that I can help understand why you're trying to get to that number.
I'm out. How important is price to you? There's those 3-layer deeps, right? Because even though you were polite about it, you're going back into kind of retorting because you're asking his data. You'll get there. I'm not saying to ignore that, but get to the emotions first because the emotions drive it. We know this in sales. People buy houses on emotion and they backfill later with logic, right? It's the same thing in our discussions. So Parker, 650, that's a good number. And I just need to know, can you help me understand why 650 is significant? I mean, do you owe a lot on the house? And I could start, I'm already asking 2 or 3 layers deep, right? To find out why 650 is important to them. Okay. Just remember, try and ask more and more questions before you get to the solution. And even though you were asking questions, it was clearly targeted to go after his data. You know what I mean? Okay. All right. So,
Most people will just say, because it's more, duh.
All right. So
it's a little bit on that is a little bit, I don't know.
So what do you mean, that their house was bigger or something, or?
No, just when you ask them, well, why is 650 significant? Why is that higher price important to you? How important is price to you? That's I don't know. That seems a little like duh.
Yeah, and again, all of this on a call is a little contrived because we're not in a real life situation. But I would just say this: you need to get to why 650 is important because they're not going to get 650. Is that fair to say? Hey, I'm not even surrendering the point, but can you help me understand why 650 is important? I mean, listen, and you could head them off at the pass, Haley. Of course, I'd love to get you 700,000 if it was possible, but I'm going to share some things with you later on. I just need to have a deeper understanding of why 650 is significant to you.
I see.
Not why would you want it? No shit.
I just don't want to be condescending, I mean,
for sure.
Because it's a little, it's a little obvious, like duh.
So it goes back to some of the things we were saying. It's 8% our words, it's 35% our tonality, and the rest of it's body language and how we set it up. So notice I'm using hand gestures. I talk with my hands a lot anyway, but smiles are important. The pace that we say it is important. And certainly, I'm not saying the words aren't important, but make sure you breathe in the process. You don't have to knee-jerk a question. It's okay to take a second, a half a second to actually formulate a better question. Hey, Haley, you know what? I really would like to get you 650. Heck, I would get you 700 if I could. But I also know that there are certain constraints on the market, and I'm going to share some things with you. So help me understand, is there something, I mean, if we got 645, is it going to be a bad day for you? If we got 630, is it going to be, help me understand how significant that pricing is for you. Right? Do you feel offended by me asking that?
No, and maybe they know something I don't know, for sale by owner next door that sold at 650 last night.
That's right. That's right. So, again,
think
questions are super, super powerful. All right. Now, in the process of asking questions, hopefully it has the goal of actually, you paraphrase what you heard the question being, and then hopefully isolate the issues. So again, using pricing, I'm going to use just for sake of time. Haley, I really appreciate you bringing that up. Is pricing the only issue that's of significance to you, or is timing, or is who buys the house, or finding your next house? Are those issues, or is it predominantly pricing? I want to isolate you to an issue, because I think all of us have had this experience. If you don't isolate it, if you don't clarify and get to a finer point, you're going to be bouncing all over the map, right? You think you're closing in on one thing and they're going to bounce you over here. And invest the time in asking good questions to where you can paraphrase and isolate the issue.
You know,
Why?
Matt, I think on those clarifying questions too, the great power of them is in the clarity that they provide to the other person too.
Yes.
It's not just you understanding what they're saying, it's them understanding
Oh my gosh.
what they're saying and being sure that's really what they mean. And that's really what they think and feel and want. Because
You
so
just-
often in that process, they're like, oh yeah, well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, it matters,
See,
or
you sound like you've had some experience with this, right? Because when we start walking people down intelligent, intentional questions, you will get some statements like that. Well, no, that's not really what I'm saying, right? No, that's not the most important thing. And they'll redirect you. That's when you can start investing your time in actually coming up with a solution that is actually the problem that they really care about. Otherwise, you're going to provide a bunch of solutions that may not mean anything to them. And you're going to be frustrated at the end going, oh my gosh, Haley's all over the map. She doesn't know what she wants. Well, is it really Haley's fault? Or are you just not quite the professional that you thought you were by asking good, intelligent, isolating questions, right? And the reason I'm bringing up the isolation is because we're eventually going to drive this to a solution. Kyle, do you have a comment?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, because we're talking about listings, and even 45 years, in the business, Mike Ferry, it's in the pre-qualification script is tell me again, where you're moving to, how soon you need to be there, what's the least amount of money you'll take for your house. So everything you're covering is all, so when you get to the presentation, I mean, obviously this isn't a presentation meeting, but my point is you're asking the questions, you're getting the information. So, and then you drop off the package and then you call them up before you go there. So they know what price you set for it. They know your commission. And then you ask them, do you have any questions? Well, yeah, I don't like the 3%, the 6% you're charging. Okay. You know what?
Stop there. So stop there. I don't like the 6%, right? What's our go-to there?
Well, how I've been taught is, you know what, Matt, 6% that's a great question. You know what? That'd be the first thing we discuss when I get there tomorrow at 2:00.
Just remember, always breathe. I'm going to drive that point home. You perform so much better when you breathe. It's true in sports. It's true in communications. Breathe, right? The second thing is don't feel like you have to solve it right then and there. That's why you ask more questions. And you know what? One of the things we were talking about last week in California was a lot of times, especially your driver types, want to get right to what is the most important thing to them that they want to talk about.
All the details. I don't want to talk about anything.
I
don't want to know about your day.
You just brought it up in your example. How much do you charge?
Yep.
You can talk about 10 other things. Yeah, I want to know how much you charge. I don't want to talk about the other stuff until I know how much you charge.
Yep.
Wow, what do you do with that? That's like real world. Don't answer that, Kyle. You and I know the answer. What do you do with that?
It's interesting. It's going to be applicable. Come August, it's going to be that concern is going to be applicable to both the buy and the sell side. That's kind of interesting when you think of it in that way, because obviously with buyers you have a lot. You have to move a little bit quicker. With a listing, you have a little bit of time to process the things.
Okay, so either one where they want to read that, they want to be in charge and redirect the conversation. How do you handle that? This is what we're talking about today. How do you handle it? Breathe. See if there's a way to ask some clarifying questions. Hey, Kyle, I really do. I promise you we are going to get to pricing. Can you explain to me what is significant about, fees? Can you explain to me what's significant to you about fees? And he's going to be like, yeah, I don't want to pay more than I have to. I'm like, fair enough. right? I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to say, fair enough. Is it possible? Would you agree with this, Kyle? If I could get you $15,000 more for your house, right? Versus somebody who charges less, would it be worth to you? You know, if somebody charged in fees 1% less, but they're not skilled, they don't know how to negotiate, they don't know how to problem resolve, they don't know how to overcome objections, they don't actually know the contracts, is that really going to be worth 0.5% to you? Is that a clarifying question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did I address his concern right off the gate? I promise you we're going to get to pricing. That's what he wants to hear. And he may 2 or 3 times, he may say, yeah, I just wanted to, fair enough. I promise you, just give me 2 minutes. It could be 20 minutes. If the point is to delay him, I promise you, give me 2 minutes. I just want to get through a couple things, and I promise I will address your concerns.
Yep.
Let's surrender. There's always going to be 1% of the population, 2% of the population that just have no people skills, no communication skills, and they're going to keep driving and driving and driving. But for most situations, if you have this skill set that we're talking about today, you can just shuttle people around kind of where you want them to go through using questions, listening, and taking them, frankly, to the place they want to go, but in the fashion that you want to do it, right? Okay, for sake of time, I'm going to hit these last 2 really quick because I want to have a couple of follow-up questions here. All right. So you go through asking questions, you go through the process of rephrasing what the questions are. Say, all right, so in all the questions we just asked, Parker, here's what I'm hearing. Is this the issue, or is there something else, right? And this is the isolation exercise. I want to get it down to 1 or 2 issues, right? Now, once we've got the 2 issues, this should be fairly straightforward, but then you go into the solution. How about this, Parker, right? Don't come at them and say, well, this is what we're going to do, right? Because that just robs them of the power and the rapport that you just built up. Much more appealing to say, how about if we do this, right? Is anybody offended by me saying that? How about we do this? How about this approach? What if I were to? Right? You're getting all these different phraseologies that you could use. And all I want them to do is say either, yes, that sounds great, or they're going to give me some clarifying statements. Well, that's not exactly it. And then I need to go through the exercise a little bit of asking a few more questions.
So let's talk about the back end of that, right?
Okay.
So you say, how about this? And then you present the options, and then you go, what do you think about those? Like, how do you finish?
You're jumping ahead.
Okay.
The last one is to get commitment from them. So if we've done our job, we've listened, we ask clarifying questions, we isolate, right? We paraphrase and isolate, we propose a solution, right? And then if the head figuratively is nodding in the right direction, right? And the temperature has come down and our relationship and the rapport has gone up, then I'm going to go in for the, as we call it in sales, the close, the commitment, right? And this is where I turn around and I say, hey, Jake, listen, I appreciate you going through that with me. I know it's not always exciting to drill down and find out exactly what's going on, but I think we have a reasonable solution. What's that called? I'm telegraphing him. He's either going to have to argue against it being reasonable, or he's subconsciously going to be agreeing with it, right? And I want to know either way. Right, I think we've come up with a reasonable solution. So here's what I would propose, Jake. If I can do X, Y, and Z, does that solve the issues we're talking about? And would you or your client be ready to move forward on this? Is that hard to do? You may not be skilled at it, but it's really what good salespeople do all the time. And salespeople include parenting, right? If I'm talking to my kid, hey, isn't this reasonable, right? I want you to have fun. I want you to have a car to drive. But if you can be in by this time, you don't screw around, can you commit to me that you'll do this?
You know, what's funny here is Lauren and I, like 8 months ago, bought a mattress from Mattress World or Mattress Kingdom or whatever it was. And I went in there, guns and blazing. I'm not going to pay more than this much money for this mattress. I know the size I want, everything like that. This guy did exactly what you said, Jeff, or sorry, Matt, and sold me the crappiest mattress that I've ever owned in my life. But he sold me on it. And of course, 2 months later, Lauren's like, you gotta get rid of that damn mattress. But it's pretty interesting what you're saying here, because I'm like, that guy telegraphed the heck out of me, and I didn't pick up on it. So that's interesting.
Well, see, I would have liked your story if you'd said, yeah, he upsold me into a Posturepedic XYZ, and I love that mattress, even though I paid twice as much,
Yeah.
Right. So we don't want to, there's some inherent satisfaction of providing solutions, right? And in sales, quite often, more often than not, it's a synergistic solution. We're trained somehow subconsciously somewhere when we got into the industry that this was a zero-sum game. The only way I win is by you losing. That is such a crappy mentality. Honestly, there's no job satisfaction other than, yeah, you come away feeling like you're a total D-bag, right? I want people on both sides, and this is a marketing strategy as well. I want both sides to come away going, freak, I'm glad I did business with Matt, because I may just end up with their clients. may or may not have happened once or twice in the past, right? That's to me the measure. If I know my craft, if I'm doing it well, is if I secure more business because of the way I do it, or do I have to go back and reinvent the wheel and find new clients because I'm not doing it well, right? And doing it well isn't just the dollars. It's not the X's and the O's. It's how did I go about doing it, right? Did I forge better relationships either with my peers, in the industry, or with my clients, or with their clients, right? That's when you know you're doing it right. So be reflective on that as you close each deal. Do a little post-mortem on yourself. I say this, and I know most of you probably aren't going to do it. I hope you'll commit to do it. When you close a deal, I know you have a little bit of transaction fatigue and you're all excited because you got money and now you got to go spend it. But force yourself to do a postmortem on the transaction. Be like, all right, so in reality, how did I actually do on this? Where did I have some blind spots on how I communicated? Where could I have handled it better? How could I have managed the personalities on the other side better? Do I understand the solutions that I should have available at the ready to bring to the table, right? Did I slow down? Did I breathe? Did I ask good questions? So I was hesitant about this training call because sometimes it feels a little like it's the stuff in the ethereal mist that we should all know. And maybe I'm the unique one. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm just the one that needs to work on this. Maybe you're all perfect and do it well. But my supposition is if we have a moment of honesty and clarity with ourselves, we're not as good as we think. And that's not to beat you up. It's just to point out, like, you know what, the cool thing about this isn't natural talent. This is a skill set. And if it's a skill set, it can be learned. The only question is, do you want to learn it? Do you want to get better at it? So I hope you wrote down the 5 steps in the framework today. I'm going to hit them one more time. Listen. I'm not going to go through all the detail. Listen. Number 2, ask questions. 3, paraphrase and isolate. 4, come up with some solutions. And then 5, once you've done that, get the commitment to whatever the end goal is, right? If I can provide the solution and we're both happy with it, are you and your client ready to do X, Y, or Z?
Matt,
Right?
what was 4 and 5?
4
again?
was actually handle the objection, provide a solution, and then 5 is going to be if that solution works, if that's workable for everybody, are you ready to commit to whatever? Are we ready to move forward? Can we
Have the photographer there Wednesday at 2.
yeah, exactly.
So 5 is essentially a if this then that scenario.
Yeah, if I can deliver on this, if we can deliver on this, if everybody can agree, doesn't it make sense? This is the soft version of getting a commitment. Doesn't it make sense for us to move forward then? Right? Because you probably started off with an objection, and now at the tail end, 5 steps later, we're gonna be like, so everything we've talked about, I heard, we've isolated, here's a possible solution. If we can make that work, doesn't that make sense? Shouldn't we be moving forward? You know what I mean? These aren't really hard things to do. Sometimes we make them harder than they are. So I'm going to go back just as a refresher of the things we brought up. Can you see the use of this in dealing with due diligence items? Are there solutions? Yeah. Why do they not work sometimes? Because we're not really good at communicating what the possibilities are and isolating and getting commitment. What about features, price, and idealism, as Kyle brought up, right? Man, there's going to be some clarifying questions on that, baby. And you're going to have to get them isolated as to what's most important to them to get rid of the extraneous things that are less important. What about appraisal? Certainly. Financing? For sure. What a great thing to be a company affiliated with Lifetime with tons of solutions, right? Step 4 becomes easy. Personality types. I could spend a whole session on the different personality types, DISC assessments. It really is important to know who you're dealing with, right? And to, as much as you can, mirror match. By the way, just one quick note on that. Over the years, I've talked to a ton of agents who've done various, whether it's Gallup, DISC, I mean, there's tons of personality assessments out there. And it always just kind of like nails on a chalkboard when I hear them say, well, I'm this type of personality. If you talk to anybody who actually does personality tests, who's qualified to do it, we're all of the things. We are all of the things. But I hear agents talk as if, oh, I'm a driver. Well, you have a strong driver tendency, right? But you actually have the other 3 components. So my point is, if we have all the components, we should be able to adapt to the person we're talking to, right? If they're a driver type, keep it short, keep it tight, get right to the point. If it's an amiable, take your time, develop friendship, tell about how you talk about how you feel about things, you know, you get the idea. All right, and then the last one is pricing. Clarifying questions, right? They'll get us. I'm not saying this is all 100% science, but I'm telling you, it moves the needle dramatically on the probability of either getting something under contract or keeping it under contract. And I'll finish with what I started with. If transactions are down 11%, you probably ought to increase the probability as much as you can to ensure your livelihood. All right. Any final comments, questions?
Great session. It was great.
Great
All
job.
right.
Good
Thanks.
reminders.
Yep. So let's get out there and kill it and make everybody fall in love with us.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
Matt,
See y'all.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.